I'm really excited about today's presentation for multiple reasons. One, I actually, if any of these questions about text analysis in the first half of the semester, in the second half of the semester, we're talking about 3D digitization and AR and VR. And my first exposure to this was actually via learning when I was a graduate student here doing yet another degree in a master's in information science. And I just kind of
combinatorics, I think.
Yes, I did. So I left in the Bernie's class right after he was hired, and I learned about photogrammetry, which as an English literature person, I was like, what's that? Doing grammar, and then I learned that it was something different, and I studied with one of the niobids that I stitched and that cleaned up and retexture is my niobid, so it's actually it's really low. Okay. Sorry, Essen. And so niobid F3 we're going to rename her officially maybe this summer. Cassie, yeah, exactly. She is also not psyche. She as we can see the hole in her back is because she was shot with an arrow. So anyway, that is to say that I owe a lot to Bernie and my position that it is today without him. I'm also really excited to try to also help him go, which is if you've done VR before at all, it often involves cables and all this thing. And if you look at this cable, part of it was no cable. And that's like a game changer. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over for me at this point. Yes, I still need to publish my article from his class.
It was a very good paper, and the article
Okay.
really neat. Is there a camera that you can place in?
Nope. So it's just shows the slideshow.
Hi, I'm Bernard Frischer. Thanks for the invitation, Cassie. I'm happy to be here. There's a lot to show you. We have 8 Oculus Go headsets. Each pair of headsets is running the same app. We have 4 different Rome Reborn apps. These are the first 4 apps that we have published for PC and VR headsets since last July. And I will tell you what they are in a moment, but let me take a bigger step back and talk about the Rome Reborn project. What is it? Why are we doing it? What's the point of it? The problem is that a lot of people have to study ancient Rome at some point or other in their education, or they develop a great curiosity about ancient Rome. It was big. It had 1 million residents, we think, more or less, at the peak of its development by late antiquity, living in about 7,000 buildings in about 10 square miles of space. It's almost completely disappeared. And so the problem is, how do you come to terms with this city if you want to come to terms with it? I've been showing you an aerial photo of the city today, taken from Google Maps. And now if we go into the 3D mode in Google Maps and come down a little bit lower so we can make out some detail, you can see that even the famous ruins of the ancient city, like the Colosseum and the Roman Forum and the Palatine, and we're looking at that part of the city here. Here's the Colosseum, here's the Imperial Palace, here's the Roman Forum. It survives only, these things survive only in ruins. Ruins that are very, very hard to understand, even if you go to Rome today. But the rest of the city, probably 99% of the surface of the city has risen by 7 to 8 meters on average from the ancient level and is covered with modern buildings. Modern, loosely defined, meaning going back to the Middle Ages, but there's no relationship to the ancient city. So just going there today doesn't help you visualize and come to terms with the ancient city. Over the centuries, different approaches and different media have been used to tackle this problem. Starting with the work called Roma Installata, or Rome Reborn, the book that gave our project its name, written in the 1440s by a papal secretary named Flavio Biondo. He was a secretary, which of course was a much more important position than you might think from the English word, use of the word secretary today. He wrote speeches for the popes and orations for religious services, and he also wrote scholarly works, including this scholarly work, which tries to put together all the ruins of Rome that he could see, combine them with the ancient literary sources that he collected, found some very important manuscripts in monasteries stashed away that helped him, and try to coordinate these things. What you can see on the ground is what was actually there in antiquity, and that's what De Roma Instaurata is. Here you see a page from the manuscript of it in the Vatican. This was the founding text not only of Roman topography and archaeology, but of Western archaeology. I don't know of anything earlier that is so comprehensive and proto-scientific. In the next century, another member of the papal court, an architect this time, Piero Ligorio, used a different medium, the medium of 2D graphics, to pull all the information that we had about ancient Rome together and present it to people so they could visualize it. And you can see here 2 of 16 sheets of his great image of the ancient city of Rome. And again, this one, like our Google Maps, shows you the area around the Colosseum, which you can see right over here where my cursor is moving. Jumping ahead, we could go every century and find another contribution and another major figure. But jumping ahead to the 20th century, we find physical urban modeling coming in to address the problem. And here you see the physical model in the Museum of Roman Civilization in a suburb of Rome that actually gave me the idea for doing Rome Reborn. I saw it in 1974 when I was a newly arrived fellow at the Art Academy in Rome, taken there by the professor of Roman archaeology with whom I'd come to do my postdoctoral work, Frank Brown. He always started his walks and talks in the fall at this model, and it gave you a great, breathtaking panorama of the ancient city, reconstructed over a 40-year period by model makers and archaeologists. And it has a lot of validity and is taken quite seriously. I put 2 of my friends from LA in there for scale, so you just get a sense of just how big it is. When we started Rome Reborn, I had the idea for Rome Reborn when I saw that in 1974, but we didn't have the technology. Technology started developing in the 1980s. I won't go into all of the iterations and variations on the technology, but finally, by 1996-7, we had true real-time interactive virtual reality and computer graphics capable of doing the job. And we started on Rome Reborn. And now you're seeing an aerial view of our model, which when we started in 1996, I thought we could do in 2 or 3 years. And now we're 22 years later and we just finished. So we did beat the physical model makers, but not by as much, by a long shot, as I expected to be able to do. Of course, in doing this project over the years, many people contributed, and I'm grateful to all of them. I didn't do all the work. I mainly raised all the money and found the talent. I was sort of like the producer of a movie more than the hands-on person who was making models, but I am a Roman topographer, so I always was the chairman of the scientific advisory committee that stands behind all the models that we made. How do we output Rome Reborn and make this visualization available? Well, we want to reach as many people as possible, so we put it out on PC, so that includes the Mac operating system as well as Windows, and on virtual reality headsets, so that includes Oculus products and Oculus compatible products like the Gear VR, Samsung, and HTC Vive. We have a website you can see here, www.romereborn.org, where you can find out more about the project, where you can find out how to order our products, our applications, and where you can join our community. We have heard half of the website is based upon the open source courseware management software called Opinio. You can register there, you can take assessments every time you do an app, and you can see where you stand on the leaderboard, in terms of how much you learn vis-a-vis the other users in the community. There are also forums where you can communicate with other users, and so on and so forth. So far, as I said, we have 4 apps completed, which I'll show you today, and a 5th is almost completed. First, there's the Flight Over Ancient Rome, which would be a very good place for anybody coming to this subject for the first time, because that takes you over that whole city model, and there are 37 stops that are organized according to different sort of urban categories like infrastructure, sewage, aqueducts, water management, government, death and burial, religion, government, and so on and so forth. Then probably the next best one to tackle would be the Roman Forum. This was at the mall in Washington. This was the civic center of ancient Rome. And the first app, the flight, is about 3 hours of content, 2 hours of content, sorry. This is 3 hours of content. So there's a lot to see. Then we have kind of an experiment, a little thing put out that costs very little money. None of these cost very much. I think the highest price is $6.99. This one costs $1.99. It's an experiment in that the others have so much data that running on these small headsets with their puny processors, and given the fact that we developed the lowest common denominator, we don't allow you to freely move and roam around. We teleport from point to point and come to a 360 panorama. So I just want to set your expectations properly for what we're going to see. But with this particular one, because it is a law court, very beautiful, important law court, the last civic building built in the ancient city in the 4th century AD, you are able to move around the hall. And then we have the Pantheon, which I don't have a slide of, the famous Pantheon, built originally in the time of Augustus and rebuilt in the time of the Emperor Hadrian. So what is this useful for? Well, I mentioned visualization. Yes, we have to tackle the study of Rome. We might do that as a student, and it's being used in schools. And we've had run experiments with hundreds of people, hundreds of users, ranging in age from 6 to 96. And so far, nobody's gotten sick, nobody's complained. And our products have been out since July 21st of last year. We don't have one bug report from all the units that we have sold. So I think, our team, our technical team, led by Nathaniel Tavares, who's a senior at IU in computer science, they are very, very skilled, and we're very grateful to them. Another application, though, equally important, and to me more important, is the use of Rome Reborn as a tool for scientific discovery. So once you have a visualization, you have in effect a kind of a time scope to go back in ancient Rome and see things, run experiments, recreate experiences that you could not do short of actual time travel. And inevitably, just given the fact that the human brain tends to, cognition arises from sensory input. You have new sensory input, new visual sensory input. You may well have new cognitions, new ideas, new insights. And I give it a lecture. I've given it a couple times already. And I'll be giving it soon again at Harvard on how you can use this as a tool for discovery. And I just report on 3 new ideas that I've had by simply going around and looking at the city model at various scales. So that's the background, and let's cut to the chase and let you start demoing what we have. There are 8 headsets, so there are 4 pairs for each of those 4 applications. I believe the Pantheon is at in the Basilica Center. That's the top of the city, and this is the Roman Forum. We have helpers from Cassie's staff who will give you a headset and show you how to get started. The very first thing is going to be just to hold the controller in your right hand in front of you and click on the oval icon button, the button with an oval icon. That will register this position, which arm straight forward, to the headset so that when you click on the virtual tablet, which is what you should be looking for, and you want to click on a hotspot, you will succeed because the controller will be calibrated with the headset. So don't be shy, step right on. And online, what I will do is, for the benefit of people watching online, we've loaded up the Roman Forum app on a PC here, and I will show if there's anybody out there online. Can we get questions or feedback from the online?
Yeah, so I'm turning this back on. Evidently, we're soft, even though you're clearly like.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah, that was good.
I will.
Yeah, but it's what people in your classes.
So Cassie, we downloaded it and then did we launch it? I can't
Oh,
remember.
very, okay, well, I don't think we launched it.
Ah, no.
Perfect.
Okay. So if anyone's out there, we're now launching the PC version of the Roman Forum app.
So you get to see what it looks like on this wall, right?
Yeah. And with all of our apps, you come into this tutorial screen to get started. And let me just go through what you see. The key thing here is this virtual tablet that you have to cling to for dear life and take this time travel. The upper left gear icon is for settings. And you can, once you've done the tutorial, you can then forever after skip it. We won't skip it if we haven't done it. You can see credits. You can change the language to Chinese or Italian if you don't want English. And finally, you can quit the app. And then to close this out and return to the tablet, you click that X. Now, to do the tutorial, you just have to read what it says on the tablet. So it says if you click and drag, you can pan the camera, as you can see, along with the mouse. Pressing the space bar will lock your mouse and allow you to pan freely until you press space again. So let's do that. I'll just press space. And now, just by moving the mouse without clicking, I can pan. Now I'm going to hit the space bar again. Use the arrow keys to bring the tablet closer or farther from you. So I'll do that. I'm moving it away. Now I'm moving it closer. In the settings in the top left, you may change your language or quit the application. We've already seen that. To begin the tutorial, click on the map icon in the upper right-hand corner. And I'll just move this closer to myself so I can see it better. There we go. And so now we're in this virtual space. This is a made-up space. It's a courtyard with statues. Each of these blue dots, when we roll over, we see the name of the feature. So statue of Jupiter, statue of Minerva, statue of Juno. Let's go over to the statue of Juno. We click on that, and we teleport over to Juno. Now, notice that on the tablet, there's what we call the tablet image, which shows us what we're looking for, because of course, when we teleport over somewhere, if we start panning around, we can see everything. How do we know what the feature of interest is? We know that from the tablet image. In this case, it's Juno, who's right here. Now, if we want to learn about Juno, turn back to the tablet, and we can click on the play button, typical blue triangle. And I'm not hearing it. Perhaps you online are. I hope you are. Are they hearing it online? Is the sound online? Because we don't have it in the room. The app has sound, but I'll just stop that. Is it picking up the sound on the app, though? I don't think it is. Anyway, there's sound there that explains that. That's it. That's the whole tutorial. If you click down here, you can proceed to ancient Rome. You come in, and you see this initial panel of the Roman Forum today, and it slowly will fade out. And you'll hear me saying, welcome to Rome, ancient Rome. And you can see we've done a change of scene from the panel of one end of the Roman Forum today to the way the same place looked in antiquity. We're standing behind the Augustan rostra, which is what this feature is, next to the Arch of Septimius Severus, which is what this feature is, right next to the belly button of the city, the Umbilicus Urbis. Over here, you can see the Marforio fountain off in the distance. We click on the map icon, which we learned to do in our training tutorial. Again, we have all these blue circles, and if we mouse over them, we see down below what they are. Here, the Carcere, the prison, the Gemonian stairs, Temple of Concordia, the Arch of Septimius Severus. Let's go to the middle of the forum to see the impact of the forum, where we get a beautiful view. I'll pan around so you can see it. And I'm not sure if you're hearing me.
I remember when you showed me this one before. I love this.
You can use our apps in two ways. You can just read the tablet, we call it the tablet text. Because the Roman Forum has long been the symbol of the ancient city. Three phases are discussed. Its peak, 4th century AD. Its nadir is Rome's cow pasture, the 18th century, and its revival is today's archaeological development in the 20th century. That could be enough, and then you might go back up to the map and just jump somewhere else. If you want to hear more, you can click here, and then you can hear, and you see how many seconds it is. So it's just over 3 minutes.
So they like have cows there, like
And, yeah, even earlier, the Campo Bacino. But you can listen and get even more information. But let's just take the quick tour. We could go over here, for example, to the Temple of Julius Caesar, and that's this. Remember, of course, if we pan around, we might say, well, what's the Temple of Julius Caesar? Well, remember, just look at the tablet image with the red arrow. That's telling you what to look for. So it's this temple that is right in front of us, and you can see inside, you see the cult statue of Julius Caesar. So it does work on PCs, Macs, Windows PCs, as well as on virtual reality headsets. If you're a teacher and you want to use this in a classroom, the PC version is nice because you can use it in effect as a set of slides and just teleport from position to position and give the lecture you want to give. You don't have to listen to what we have to say, our experts have to say. So, are there any questions or comments coming in? If so, I can answer them. Which one did you see? The forum? Oh, the black. Ask if anyone was there. I should say something or do something so they're not bored. They don't know. But is there any sense that anybody's out there listening? 8 people. We invite anyone online. You can text, send a question or a comment. I'd be happy to respond and try to do. I guess I can just keep, meanwhile, moving around here. So to move around, what you have to do is find the tablet, of course. So you want to cling to the tablet for dear life. And we go back to the map. Note the map has 2 levels. We can zoom in if we click on the plus sign. I'm going to go over here and show you a feature that's really popular, the time warp. We go over to, we have many, many time warps. We go to the Lacus Curtius, which is a fountain with that commemorates a guy named Curtius, an early Republican figure. The Romans identified in 3 different ways. But he rode his horse for some unknown reason. Well, there were 3 reasons given, but they are all incompatible reasons, into this part of the forum in the early centuries of the Republic when it was a swamp, and he disappeared in kind of a sinkhole, sacrificing his life for the community. And but getting back to the reason I brought you here is to see the time warp. And there are 2 time warps actually here. I'll click on the first one. And if we click on now, we can see how the forum looks today from the exact same spot. I was able to get a permit to go into the forum. There you see me off in the distance, trying to get out of the picture, with our Insta Pro 360 8K camera, and I was able to make a series of panoramic shots of what the forum looks like today from the same spot. And you can toggle back and forth, and I'll do that where you can see it really work beautifully, I think, is you watch, for example, the Senate House. This is the Curia Julia, or the ancient Senate House. And I've got to get back over to the tablet and see where it is. Maybe I can.
Is this view not accessible? Or
it's not really accessible, no. This particular view, they keep you beyond the railing. And if you would be standing out over here, or in the opposite end of the forum, back over this way, you're not allowed in the center of the forum anymore. We were when I first went there. Let's go to the then, and you'll see how closely Nathaniel Tavares, our brilliant computer science major here at IU, was able to align these two panos. I'll fade out to the now again. And you can really get a sense of here how things have changed and how really incomprehensible the forum is when you just go there today. There are very few signs identifying what you're seeing, helping you. I remember when I went there with my father in 1971, I just got my BA in classics, and I'd taken a graduation present to Rome by my father. And we bought the guidebook by the director of the forum, sat down on a stone somewhere and tried to figure out where we were, and we never succeeded. We never had any idea where we were. I have gone many times, I've asked many tourists, what are you looking at? And I don't think I've ever gotten a correct answer. It's very hard to understand the Roman Forum, even if you're there. I think it's easier to understand if you're in Rome Reborn. That's what it is.
Are there historical photos?
There are historical photos, and we could do that. We could show the evolution of the phases stuff. We haven't. There's a lot of bells and whistles we could add. On the tablet, we could have a lot more imagery than we currently do. We could show the historic views here. We could show ancient coins that illustrate the monuments. And yes, is somebody there with a question?
Yes.
Good question. When did they start really studying and protecting the site? The papal government was always very progressive. As you could see, they always hired very intelligent, educated people. So even in the 15th century, the popes didn't mind if the secretary went around and studied the ruins and so on and so forth. But starting in the Renaissance, laws were passed prohibiting the excavation or despoiling of monuments to reuse the building materials. You needed a permit to do that. And where things really got strict was with the so-called Paca law of, I believe, 1819. That's when they really clamped down on this. And I mean, even earlier they had such laws, but starting in 1819, they were very strictly enforced. As far as the study of the forum, the great period was for excavating and rediscovering the forum, which, by the way, when we look over here, if we go back this way, this is the Senate House, where the cursor is. Next to it is this church of Santi Martina e Luca, St. Martin and Luke. It sits 7.5 meters above the level, the ancient level which the Senate House is at. I don't know if you can really tell that, but it's much, much higher because it hasn't been excavated. The ground had risen, and this was a pasture. This is where the animal pasture, the cow pasture. This is where they had a cattle market in the medieval and Renaissance city. But starting in the early 19th century, in the Napoleonic period of the Napoleonic occupation, the first excavations occurred. Then after Napoleon lost at Waterloo, and you had the Restoration period in Europe, you had the papal government undertaking concerted and organized excavations. When the papal government fell in 1871 to the Italian government led by the Savoia from with their capital in Turin, then things really took off because and we know this from reading speeches of, say, the Minister of Public Education, who was in charge of excavation and archaeology for the whole country. You may remember that Cavour, who was the prime minister who under Victor Emmanuel II was responsible for the reunification of Italy from the late 1850s to 1871. And Cavour said after the fall of Rome and the establishment of Rome as the capital of the new country in 1871, we've created Italy, now we must create the Italians. And if you go to Italy today and you ask somebody, what's your patria, what's your country? They will always say Siena or Venice. They won't say Italy, probably. So they still haven't really created that sense of Italian national identity. But you can read in the 1870s, 1880s, the speeches, annual speeches in Parliament by the Minister of Education. Very often they have a section on the archaeological work, and they say, we're going to build the new national identity on ancient Rome, which is a kind of a revolt against Catholic Italy. Because ancient Rome is pagan, it was pre-Catholic, pre-Christian. And so they invested a lot in the excavations to especially Pompeii and here in the Roman Forum. And so starting in the 1870s until World War I, that's when most of what you see today in the archaeological park was dug out and studied, especially by a guy named Giacomo Boni, who's the great hero of the Forum excavations. So it started as early as 1805, 1810 in the Napoleonic period, gathered steam until 1871, then really exploded in the 1870s to World War I, 1914. I hope that answers the question. Any other questions coming in? And I see a lot of headsets not being used. You shouldn't listen to me, please. Go back to the immersive experience, much more interesting. All these apps have many minutes of content. The shortest one is the Basilica. It might be about a half hour of content. The Pantheon's probably about 45 minutes to an hour. The Forum, as I said, is 3 hours. There are 47 stops. And the flight over Rome is 37 stops. And if you sign up in the community section of the website, you can take the assessments and see how much you learn and see how you stack up against everybody else. We're trying to gamify learning and make it a fun competition. If you're a teacher out there, you can write to us and ask for us to set up a grade book in this courseware. So you can register your own students, and all their scores will appear in your grade book, and they will have their own leaderboard, so they won't compete against everybody, just amongst each other. If it turns off, hit the on and off button again. Yeah, if you go to the view icon, it'll say Cambia. Put it in Chinese. Of course. Let's see what else we can show you. We can go inside a number of buildings. So let's go back out. I'm saying we can go inside a number of buildings like the Curia Julia, the Senate House. So we're fading back in from that panel of the scene today. What we're looking for, as we can see on the tablet, is this facade, which is this. And we can go inside, because on the tablet there's not only a text giving you a brief description of what you're looking at and the play button if you want to hear the audio, but there's related information, and in the related information we have more time warps. We also have the interior, so we can actually go inside. And if we go inside, of course we can hear interpretation of what we're seeing. The interpretations generally have to do with how do we know that there was this Pavonazzetto marble on the lower register of the walls and the porphyry panels above and so on. And this floor, is that made up, invented, or is there evidence? We talk about all of that. But you see that statue down at the end of the hall. If we go back to the tablet, there's a lot about that statue, the victory monuments. And we can get closer to them and listen in and learn about this very, very famous monument that became the subject of a almost century-long debate between the Christians and the pagans in the 4th century AD after Rome started to become Christianized, and Christianity became the official state religion. In roughly 390 AD under Theodosius, all the pagan cults around the empire were closed down. Theodosius did, however, take measures to protect all the temples and monuments. He said that they were now museums. They should be protected as historic monuments, but not used for worship. This statue in the middle of the 4th century, it was removed, then it was brought back, then it was removed again, then it was brought back, then it was removed. In one of these events, we have the speeches by the pagan senator Symmachus, presented to the emperor, who's a Christian, who's living in Milan, arguing for the importance of this victory statue. Finally, after the year 400, it disappears from view. We never see it again. We don't know what ultimately happened to it. But Symmachus and the pagans are saying, look, victory is a goddess. This was not just a statue. This was a goddess. This was holy. And the reason that Rome had such a great empire and the city was the eternal city, as they called it themselves, was because it was under the protection of victory. Otherwise, it would have been long since destroyed. And the pagan senators were predicting that the city would be destroyed if the statue were removed. And in 410 AD, it was destroyed by Alaric in the first of 3 major sacks of the city in the 5th century AD. St. Augustine then wrote the City of God as a result of Alaric's sack. He starts out by saying the whole world is stunned and shocked that the mother city, eternal Rome, has been sacked. And he says the pagans said that if we took the victory altar out, this would happen. And I want to say that yes, it happened, but it doesn't matter that it happened, because the important thing is not the city of man, it's the city of God. And then he's off and running with his long book.
Are there any stops with Romulus and Remus?
Romulus and Remus, yes.
So I didn't know that Romulus was possibly a historical figure.
Very controversial topic. Very few people think that, but there are some.
Well, I had no idea
There is
that
a
anyone
famous.
thought that.
Well, there's a famous Italian archaeologist, now retired at the Sapienza University, who really thinks that. We go over to the Lapis Niger. This monument, let me try to move it out of the way, which is right here in front of the Senate House, was again like that Lapis Curtius that we saw earlier, that pond with 3 different curtii who were proposed. This had different identifications and explanations, but one of them was that it was the tomb of Romulus, or the tomb of the father of an early king. So, of course, it marked the spot. And this has been excavated. It was excavated by Boni, and he found it. It was in all the papers of the world. I think the year was 1899. It was a great discovery, because it was always mentioned in the sources. It's so-called black stone, the Lapis Niger, the black stone monument. This is a pavement of the forum that marks this sacred spot, which they didn't know what it signified, but they knew it was sacred and it had to be maintained. But Boni then excavated down this 5 meters to the archaic level, when Romulus would have lived, and he found a U-shaped altar and a conical-shaped pillar. And on the pillar was an inscription that still survives. It was cut off in the middle, but half of it survives in archaic Latin. And it marks the spot as sacred to a king. Regai, Rex, Regis, Regai, David, to the king. It's sacred to a king. It doesn't mention who the king is, or at least in the part that we have. Very, very important spot, and the one spot in the forum associated with Romulus. The putative founder of the city in 753 BC, for those of you who don't know that, so in the 8th century BC. So that's a period the culture is illiterate, there's no historic records that survive. All the Roman legends attributed the founder of the city to Romulus. But modern historians and archaeologists don't believe that. They think it's just a legend, that it's a back formation for the name Roma, Rome. Romulus is the little Roman. So nobody really believes that, except for one very influential Italian professor named Andrea Carabini, who actually thinks he's found the house of Romulus and other early figures of Roman legend on top of the Palatine Hill. Yes. I think the oldest reference to Romulus dates to the 3rd century BC, if I'm not mistaken. The great expert on this and the great critic of Carabini is the English scholar T.P. Wiseman, who has a book on Romulus where you can read about it in detail. But I'm pretty sure first reference to him that is all in all detail is in the 3rd century BC. So that's already 400 years later. We've gone through a period of a couple of centuries of pre-literacy, or illiteracy. You don't want to be politically correct.
Well, I think the anti-is to the kids and
Well, the Aeneid is written in the time of Augustus, Virgil in the 30s and 20s BC, so that's also very good. Any questions coming in on the wire? Any questions in the room? What started my fascination with Rome? I would say the thing that I first knew nothing about Rome until 6th grade when we read Bury's Ancient History, which was a college textbook that in my school we had in 6th grade. I actually that was unusual. And after this, at some point in reading about ancient Rome, I had a kind of a vision one night at home in my bedroom, and I stayed up till the early hours of the night as if some voice was dictating a poem to me, and I wrote this poem, this enormous poem, in some kind of a trance. And that's what started it. And then I started studying Latin 2 years later in 8th grade. We didn't have Latin until 8th grade. And I had 5 years of high school Latin, and 2 years of Greek, 4 years of German, second year college calculus, stopped there. And then went to college and I became, I wanted to be a Greek major, but I was told, because I didn't really like the Latin language, but I was told you had to study Greek and Latin, be a classics major. So I was put into the advanced Latin course that was being offered, and it was taught by a wonderful old man named Archibald Allen, and the reading material were all of the dirty poems that we not only didn't read in high school, but didn't even know existed. And that kind of started to get me hooked because I saw that Latin was much more interesting than what the high school curriculum had led me to believe, which was that it was serious stuff like Cicero and Tacitus history and law and orations, and very serious and to me very boring. Then I actually went to Rome and I changed my, when I got that grand tour of Europe as a graduation present for my parents, and I went to Athens, I went to Rome. I was still, my first publication, which I did when I was 19, was on a Greek play by Euripides. But, so I really still was committed to Greek more than Latin. But when I saw Athens and Rome, I decided that life is short and Rome was much more interesting, although I still love Athens. And we're talking right now about doing Athens Reborn with an important academic partner. If we can find funding, we will do that next. We would like to do Athens Reborn, Jerusalem Reborn to complement Rome Reborn, because we think those are the three sort of pillars of our culture. And it would be great if kids in the 21st century could study their ancient history by taking virtual field trips back to these great places. And we do have funding on a new project, which is Baalbek, which is a site going all the way back to the Neolithic, but in the Roman period, the Roman imperial period, was a very important pilgrimage site. And we are working there with the German Archaeological Institute in Berlin, who have a partnership with for that. And the patron of that project said he would sponsor a series of VR apps on Pompeii and Herculaneum once we finish Baalbek. So we have a lot. Meanwhile, Rome is not done. We have probably at least 10 more apps to do on Rome. The next one will be the Colosseum District, which is almost finished. It needs some final touches, and that'll be out. And then this summer, we hope to do the Imperial Forum, sort of like the Roman Forum, but when they ran out of room in the Roman Forum, then they started building other big government plazas adjacent to the north.
Have you thought about non-Western states, like Shanghai or Beijing?
Non-Western? Of course, I'd love to. We can't do everything, and I'm sure everything
else
will be done by others. But I'm going to be 70 in May, so there's only so much more I can do. And I don't know anything about that, have no foothold or contacts. But I hope that what we're doing will, encourage competition, and others will do other things and stake out other virtual territory. They still can, yes. The Forbidden City has been done several times. What were you thinking of? Do you think about Beijing? Shanghai. I don't know anything about that. Love to do Kyoto. I went there for my 50th birthday. I love Kyoto. And there's so many places around the world. I mean, to see what you should do, just look at the World Heritage list, over 1,000 sites. That's a good indication of where you should look in the first instance, I would think. Nagasaki and Hiroshima is suggested as passage. Yeah. Are there still people online or not? Well, we could just close it out, or do we promise to keep going till 5? Because then I have to concentrate more on the people who are in the room. Love to have your reactions and feedback. Multiplayer is coming very soon. All the programming has been done. We need to refine it and make it. So multiplayer, of course, that's just a term like saying game engine doesn't mean that anyone's playing or anything, but it does mean that people around the world can meet in the same place and they could see each other in the scene as a headset and their controller would be seen. And if they point at something, then everybody who's tuned in, and it can be an arbitrary number, it can be a lot of people, would see what's being pointed at, and you can also talk and listen to each other. So this could be a way for distance learning to be done. It could be a way for an expert who's excavated something to get a tour, and people could sign up and maybe pay $25 and follow an expert around. Whatever. This is, by the way, not an academic project anymore. It started out as such, but it became, in 2010, in the aftermath of the Great Recession, the impossibility for 2 years to find any more funding, I decided to just completely go off on my own, rebuild everything. This is version 3.0 of the model. Start from scratch, rebuild everything. I own it all. It's done through a private company. We charge the exorbitant amount of $199, $399, $699. I apologize. But I do have academic works out that cost $150 and so on. Somehow, if you are published by an academic press, you can charge people $150 for something that probably only 50 people in the world will ever read. If you do this, then you're criticized for making money. So it'll take, at the rate we're going, it will take, well, I don't think we'll ever make money because we're losing money much faster than we're making money. But I'm hoping that the trend lines will reverse, meet and then reverse at some point, but at the rate we're going, it may take 5 to 10 years.
I think it's pretty smart to design the lowest common. Like the newer higher capability, that's battery powered Quest. Are you looking at your suite of products against
we do have a developer Quest, and the great thing about the Quest is that the safe area, which for this is about 10 by 10 feet, is 200 by 200 feet. That is another reason why I think multiplayer is really important. So let's say you could take over the basketball arena in the high school to have all the Latin students walk around. They have to see each other, otherwise they get fall into it. The multiplayer allows you to see what you do without the headset on. But so we are experimenting with Quest. The problem is the problem that the geometry of these models is so heavy that you can't really run in real time in most cases. So we're also experimenting with, when we go inside the Senate House there, that's just a box that's even smaller than the facility, which you make a facility run on this. We could make that one. So maybe when you teleport over there, it loads up the interior. Maybe that's how we could cheat. I don't think you'll be able to walk around the foreign closet at this level with these things. Of course, as developers, with our Vive Pro and our riffs, we can, we have a lot of video memory on our machines, a lot of RAM and fast machines. So we can go anywhere we want, which is how we choose the positions that we give you by moving around in real time.
Use a higher bit.
Yeah. Try to find the best view. That's one of the things my topics about in the Harvard lecture coming up is about the Roman Forum. The monuments were so crowded, and they were often the case with temples on such high podia that the best view, which the Greek and Roman architecture is generally an axial frontal view, where you can see everything, and everything is symmetrical and lines up, it was almost always blocked in the Roman Forum. You never got the best view unless you were a bird that could go up in the air. And that sets off a chain, which nobody ever mentioned. I never thought of it until I could put it on. And then I had to make the app. And I kept finding that we have to put people up in the air. So hence we invented this basket, this safety basket, which can serve this well for the green flag. So that people felt secure when they were up in the air. And by the way, if you go into settings, when you have the basket displayed, there's a slider, you can turn it off, and you can add transparency and make it go away if your stomach is up to it, up to the challenge. But as I'm moving around trying to find the best views, I found there is no best view in many cases. And that was interesting. Nobody ever talked about it. And that then linked up with a couple of mysteries, like why in late antiquity did they build these speakers platforms? Look in the Roman Forum, the other speakers platform went all the way back to time of Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar built the speakers platform to be a speakers platform for political assemblies, where the citizenry assembled in that big open plaza forum. I guess we could actually take a look over it. So there's the Caesarian and then rebuilt by Augustus, so ultimately we call it the Augustan rostra. The citizens stood in front. Of course, you have to think away this column, which is early 4th century AD feature, and these so-called anaglyphs of Trajan, these reliefs here. It was probably taken somewhere else and was set up here in the 4th century AD. So this is all open, and that's where people listen to their leaders address them. And then, probably the 280s to 310 period, this other rostra was built on the other side. But there hadn't been a political assembly in the Forum since Augustus. So why build a new rostra, and why couldn't they keep the old one? So suddenly I remembered that there is one account, a precious account, of a visit to the Roman Forum, and it was by the emperor in the year 357 AD, Constantius II. And it occurs in the historian of the time, Ammianus Marcellinus, and he says that when Constantius came to Rome for the first time, because the capital now is in Constantinople, moved there in the 320s AD by Constantine, he modestly named the city after himself. Constantinople means Constantine's polis, his city. We're told by Ammianus, he made straight for the Forum, and in the Forum he went up on the rostra, and he marveled at all the sights, and at how thickly together, how tightly packed together the monuments were, wherever he looked. And so my guess is that the old rostra was kept, because Rome became a great tourist destination in the empire. People came into the city from all over, and of course they wanted to go visit the Forum, the way you go to Washington, you go to the mall, and the government buildings around the mall. The people did that in antiquity. They probably went to the rostra to start out with, because that's where you could actually see something, because that's 4 meters above the plaza level. And they built the other one just so they could get a good view of things on the other side, at the other end. There was a distance of about 200 yards in between the two of them. So that's a theory, but it is given some small support by that account of Constantius II's visit. Most of the time in the field of plastics, you have no support. You just have a theory. So, we're happy to have any support whatsoever. Each of those statutes is different, yes. They're all different.
You know,
At least as to pose.
another combinatory problem.
Another one.
Combinatory problem.
Another one, yeah. Well, just listening to me and looking at this, you should be. There are different apps you can try. Any comments about the apps? About these apps? Maybe, we rarely get that kind of report. I wonder if we really had the expectation. I used to, in the 90s, it took a while. They had to do it without the equipment. But I just had to automatic stops. And if you don't give up,
I guess that's why I wanted to have that because how that's true and how there's a Bernard Frischer. I guess I'll put where I can stand up on the rope going down the bay.
we've kind of made a virtue out of the necessity of not allowing people to get run around by saying nobody gets sick, there's no emotion. There's not even binocular vision, it's all non. There's no reason. Nobody doesn't expect to done it.
I thought that some of it had to do with frame refreshment.
It does. That can cause it. If you go, the minimum you're sick is 60 frames per second.
And you're an outlier, but this is the other fact I brought out again and again. Women get sick 4 times as often as men do. And went to the Netherlands, where she was actually able to get funding to testing on transgender men and women. And as your level of estrogen rises, getting sick in place in kind of like the experiences of being sick. So estrogen literally makes you more sensitive to the generic.
Were you standing or were you sitting? Do you notice a difference? Because I think of standing down. I could sit and feel This chair.
The swivel chairs are perfect. That's what you want.
Yeah, I was actually thinking because I was in the regular city office chair Sunday, and I had tables. And I was like, wow.
Did you ever choke yourself? Because I did that all the time with the kids.
So it was in the
Start
Titanic,
spinning
and
around.
I wanted to turn around and all caught up. It's a problem. No, these are like actually planned. Yeah. So I just like expanded the one that was when I was when I was looking at it. I wondered, have you noticed Chauncey has this memory of and wind and smell, and I actually did do a presentation on one of Birdie's reconstructions that also has like the vinegar smell for the vinegar eggs and like the piece.
How's that coming? Is that,
Oh, that's good. We started this.
but have you continued developing?
Oh, yeah. Types of devices.
Is it,
Tools that I built. Continually refining it, getting feedback.
is Is there going to be a product symbol?
So
Yeah.
that was the same thing.
So with IU, I partnered with IU in that permanent contract. And then I'm sort of marking up that contract to sort of reflect this IU wants in terms of like electronic devices. Doing it in my garage. Anyway, the question you had about sickness, like the hot air balloon, this is a great idea. And I separately in another project have a hot air balloon. And the reason being is it's saying that the vestibular system likes to form the walls of the ceiling because they don't move. So all of our input from our ear, just by that stuff being there, or just our station just kind of normalized by that. So having even rendering a note, a fake note, that you can put a paper on it, rendering just your notes. You see our notes. But having the basket,
Although I do want to, I know that we had when talked about some graphics a few years ago, and there's a VR over San Francisco, and you got it like this. You were like a bird. And then I also like make $1 million idea to make some exercise. There's stadium here. It's great. And then maybe make me a little fish. But I don't know how that works.
I mean,
I love that.
it all comes down to cortisol. It's like your body's saying something's wrong with you. You have cortisol in your bloodstream. How much?
Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
Thank you so
coming.
much for